The most recent social media craze has been the 10-year challenge. You've seen the posts from people that you either care about or don't. They post a photo of them in 2009 and then one currently in 2019 to showcase just how much that they have grown in a 10-year period. You can do the same thing with bands, honestly, and with some of them you would just see a maturity in sound or perhaps a maturity in how the membership looks. With other groups it would be almost like seeing a brand new person, a brand new sonic entity, and that's where we are kind of at today. Bring Me the Horizon in 2019 is a very different group than the Bring Me Horizon that you probably remember from 2009. The sound is completely different. It's something where they have embraced something completely vacant of some of their elder identity while still trying to retain some of those parts in small little cases. In the case of their last album, That's the Spirit, looking at it as a heavy metal album seemed like it was kind of bordering on a stretch. It was teetering and holding on for dear life. And as a result, that was a disc that got a lot of criticism from longtime fans and was not really seen as a positive step in the group's direction. A lot of people thought that this was just a one-stop deviation. But enter AMO, and this album showcases that it was not just a one-trick pony. Instead, this was a direction that the band wanted to explore full scale. They wanted to go all in. So this is already going to be a tricky review, kind of controversial, and we have to look at it from those lights, considering we can't look at this as a heavy metal album. We can't review it like a heavy metal album, because if we do that, instantaneously, this is going to become curse-filled and laden with a lot of anger. And that's not what we actually need for this disc. We need to look at it as a pop record, as an alternative rock album, as an electronica album. We have to look at it for the identity in which it possesses. So let's do that. And that's going to be the first tricky thing in order to try to accomplish. Now, whenever this album begins with "I apologize if you feel something," this is one that immediately strikes the user as what's going on here. It's kind of a strange introduction, and it's one that most probably felt was merely that. It was just an introduction, something to cause a setup into what was to come, not necessarily a signpost of the entirety of the record. And it definitely doesn't work as a signpost for that either, to be perfectly honest, because it doesn't really show the diversity that this album attempts to really cater to, but maybe doesn't necessarily always hit. If there's one thing that I will say about this disc is the fact that that whole idea of going all in that I critiqued Disturbed so harshly for last year for not doing so, Bring Me the Horizon actually did it. They wanted to sample these different ideas. They wanted to have an eclectic nature to them. They wanted this album to not just be a singular monochrome style. And they went out and they actually accomplished it. Really, the quality of the result is what the question truly is. Going into Mantra, this track is actually pretty fun, and as a result, whenever you look at it distant from those heavy metal eyes, you can see that it's an alright song. A lot of these tracks are not going to go sort of outward or out of the way in order to seem really creatively resplendent. They're not going to try to manufacture some sort of new riff pattern or really stray too far from the path of the riff patterns that you would see in a lot of conventional pop music or conventional popular music. However, the difference that really exists between this and a lot of the other songs of similar veneer is the fact that there's a certain honesty to it, considering a lot of these lyrics are about the concept of love and are taken somewhat from Ollie Sykes' Divorce. So there is an honesty of inward thoughts, and you can tell that it's ones that have been written by the actual artist as opposed to a parade team of producers. But also, just in sound itself, that little heavier element is kind of directly opposite to what you see in a lot of those conventional pop song structures of today's age, where they embrace a lot more minimalism and really are going for a more vacant backdrop that has little drops here and there, either that or try to assault you with a wall of bass. So, as a fitting single, Mantra actually is not all of that bad, although it will come off to many fans as a bit simple. Nihilist Blues is extremely weird because, as one person I was speaking to said, it felt like they walked into a club and this was on. It's a 5-minute, 29-second long cut, the second longest track on the album, and it features Grimes. And that combination is not too bad, but this is this track that feels the most like they're trying to bleed and blend toward convention. And as a result of it, it has only moments of real saving grace, whereas the rest of them, it blends, but at the same time doesn't feel completely and totally like a home run. That home run is actually coming with In the Dark, which is just a really fun track. What's surprising about this song, and you'll be surprised by this as well, is that in its beginnings, in its infancy, its first couple of seconds, it sounds like it could be a forgotten Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran song. You know, those pop conventions that so many people will immediately be like, what the fuck? No, take it away, it no longer pleases me. But in reality, whenever you hear groups such as Bring Me the Horizon do that with a little bit more edge and with a little bit more power behind those chords, a little bit more heaviness, it actually does work. The structure does feel like it has a little bit going for it. And as a result, In the Dark is a surprisingly catchy song that also feels like it really caters to you. It feels like that you're listening to something that is off the metal path that you're actually enjoying within your ears. And again, we're not reviewing this as a metal record, so this is one that I feel could have some crossover appeal within that world development. You could listen to this and feel to yourself, I can't believe that I enjoy this. Trust me, that was one of the first things that I said whenever I enjoyed this song. Going into Wonderful Life and then into Ouch, this is taking sort of that vacancy and adding a little bit more dynamisty to it. And as a result, Wonderful Life comes off as decent, but not really very memorable. And then Ouch being just a bit of an introduction going into Medicine. Medicine has kind of a weird, like, almost Maroon 5-ish feel to it, and the same could be said for a couple of other songs. And again, Maroon 5, one of those bands, take it away, it no longer pleases me, auto-tune, Adam Levine, shitbag motherfucker, blah, 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 blah. This is showing right here that rock still has some of that crossover element that's potential there. And again, whenever you utilize some of those electronic elements that go alongside the traditional instrumentation of rock and the basis of heavy metal music, it is able to create and craft something that is a little bit unique and feels like it's sort of a marriage that shouldn't happen because it's kind of an opposites attract kind of thing. But as a result, the marriage is actually not that bad. It's one that's remained steady for years and years, if we're going to fulfill the metaphor. Not a bad track, not a bad song. I do like some of the vocal effect that we get from Ollie on this one. I'm surprised to be complimenting the guy, considering I don't know if that's something I've done all that much in the past, and that's an apology that I will actually own up to. But there is some good moments on Medicine that I did enjoy. Now, Sugar, Honey, Ice, and Tea is where things start to take a little bit of a turn. Once again, this is a song that feels like it has that energy behind it, and the beginning riff of this track actually feels like it could go on a Muse record, which again, one thing I like about this disc is the fact that I'm able to draw a lot of different comparisons whenever it comes to some of the structure that I hear, and I'm able to sort of collectively put that together. That told me that they did decide to embrace this idea fully. What happens though in the second half of this disc is the fact that you get into some of that faux rhyming where you have just some rhythmic singing that sounds like Ollie is trying to embrace sort of that inner white boy rapper that goes over top of some of these sort of distant compositions that try to amp up here and there. There's this track called Heavy Metal that has like zero to do with that. So if you're a heavy metal fan, you pick up this record, see that song, and immediately think, oh, there's my saving grace if the rest of this sucks. Not so much, not so fast. This is just a track, or should I say, this is just an album, really, that it loses a lot of its speed during the latter portion of it, and I think goes a little bit too far all in. See, there's a way in which you can go all in and actually overstep your ground. As a great example of this, for you wrestling buffs out there, what if All In, which was sponsored by Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks, felt like it was too far off of the convention? Instead of it being professional wrestling, it was actually theater or opera, or you went there and all of a sudden a baseball game broke out. There's a way in which you can decide to be different and commit to it too much to the point where you're actually starting to lose ground as opposed to gain a brand new audience or gain a brand new appreciation. And that's what happens with the second part of AMO by Bring Me the Horizon. It just kind of becomes a little bit too much. They went a little bit too far with this. 8 tracks in, it has a great approach to it, and it feels like it has a lot of great element, and then whenever it goes a little bit too deep off of the beaten path and tries to embrace a couple of other different things in order to try to just fully compensate the witch's brew and manufacture it together, it goes a little bit off the reservation. And as a result, these final couple of tracks do not have nearly the same type of appeal. You don't listen to these and feel as much like you're enjoying them based off of what the band has now become. This is an album that is perplexing, but in a good way, whereas, for example, Evolution by Disturbed was perplexing in a bad way, although it was still a somewhat decent outing. And that's what this is too. This is a somewhat decent outing, and I felt like whenever I first started listening to this, I wasn't going to have that opinion of it, but I found myself enjoying a lot of the first half of this album a lot more than I thought that I was, and as a result, made me realize that if this is the identity that Bring Me the Horizon wants to have, that's the spirit. May have been just a warm-up act to what AMO was able to give us, and AMO felt a little bit more focused, a little bit more mature, and very real. That's the one thing about this album I will admit about. It is an extremely real-sounding disc, and it comes from the idea that we all express, which is love, and a tragedy that a lot of us may feel, which is divorce or losing love. So as a result, that all is caked together very, very nicely. But the album is one that loses a lot of momentum during its latter portions and really hurts its overall credibility. And also, it's going to be such a vast and different album that old school fans of this band are not going to care for this at all. Old school fans are going to listen to this and immediately despise every element of it unless they themselves have changed within that 10-year period. Again, morphing along with the band, those are the folks that are going to listen to this and appreciate it. Hardcore fanboys may also appreciate this, considering they love more than just the music, they love the band themselves. But whenever it comes to those who enjoyed this band perhaps just from a heavy metal perspective and didn't exactly want them to change that much, if that's the spirit was kind of like a warning cry to them, if that was a warning cry to you, then AMO is really the death nail to your appreciation and perhaps your love toward Bring Me the Horizon, unless you already have an appreciation or have a sort of like a double life also loving pop music, because that's where this album really has a lot of its roots in. There's heaviness there that really could be constricted more toward the alternative universe, but aside from that, this is one that's going in that poppy direction, and that's just where they are right now. It's an acceptance that needs to happen. I would honestly give this album a 16. It's better than average, but it's not one that I necessarily would say with open arms and eyes, you need to listen to this. I would say that if you're a fan of Bring Me the Horizon, you probably should to formulate your own opinion about this, and that's about as far as I'm going to go with that. I'm going to let your comments really speak for themselves. I know there's going to be a lot of you that say, wow, I can't believe you didn't decimate this thing. Well, that's the thing. I didn't review this as a metal album. I reviewed this as a pop record. Maybe if we get 5,000 likes on this video, which will never happen, I'll re-record this, reviewing it as a metal album and just get upset for no reason. But that's on you. I want to know what you guys think about this disc. I feel like it's going to be one that's going to divide a lot of people. It's going to create a lot of maybe discontent. But I want to know your thoughts. So let me know in the comments below. I'm coverkillernation. I am the master of CKN Club. You can get this shirt, actually, over on Teespring. The link is in the description box below. I'll talk to each and every one of you guys next time. Thanks again. Take care.